Hello, I'm Helen from Journal with Purpose, and I'm really pleased that Cult Pens have asked me to come and share another journaling video with you. In this one, we're going to be focused on end of year journaling. And I don't know if you're anything like me, but this time of year can be quite overwhelming. There's just usually so much to do. There's things that you perhaps want to wrap up before the end of year, lots of different demands on your time that perhaps you don't get at other times of the year. And I think that journaling's a really good way to just press pause on that for a few minutes, where you take time to think about what you want to do before the end of the year and how you want to get set up ready to start 2023. So I'm going to encourage you to try and find a little bit of quiet time. It doesn't have to be loads, but where you can hopefully be not interrupted for a few minutes and just take some time to think back about how this year has been for you and any changes that you might want to make. And I'm going to guide you through my own process that I follow at the end of every single year to just start gradually thinking back through everything that's happened and start putting some little thoughts and ideas into place for next year. I add quite a few creative elements to my pages because for me that's part of the sign for my brain to switch off, to stop worrying about all of the things that I've still got left to do and just relax and take that bit of time for me. But again, the creative elements are definitely not essential, but it's something that I find fun and really adds to my journaling experience. So I really hope you enjoy the video. The journal I'm going to be using today is this Flex book, and it's in a moleskin size, so it's slightly narrower than A5. As I mentioned, I tend to use lots of creative elements in my journals, and this is my creative journal, but usually somewhere where I'm thinking about particular things that are happening in my life and perhaps how I want to tackle them. And I often pick a quote which ties in with what's on my mind at that time, and playing around with lots of different supplies, but just giving myself plenty of space to get all of my thoughts out onto paper. And having a journal is really helpful also when it comes to doing this end of year review, because you can start to look back through some of your pages and remind yourself of the things you've experienced over the whole year, rather than just focusing on what's happening in your life at this precise moment. Because it can be quite hard to get that perspective, I think, to remember everything that's happened back over the year. But things like this can be really, really helpful. I also keep a daily journal inside this Traveller's Company weekly planner, and again, really helpful for me for being able to just look at things that have happened during the course of that year. Because I do find otherwise that we tend to be a bit slanted in our view. If we're having a really good week when we do our end of year review, then we might give ourselves like a really positive outlook on what we've been able to achieve. And if we're having a really tough week, then it can be easy to think that actually all of the year was tough and perhaps you didn't get anything done that you think is of value. So be aware of trying to do your end of month review with at least some sense of kind of impartiality, and perhaps if you've made notes, whether it's in a journal or a diary, having a quick flick back through before you start so that you can just get a clearer picture really on the whole year. So the first thing I like to do as my end of year review is ask myself 3 questions. And I keep this bit really, really simple, and I try not to overthink it. So I'm going to write out my heading and the 3 questions I want to ask myself. And for this, I'm using a Tombow Fudenosuke brush pen with a firm nib, but any kind of pen and any kind of journal is absolutely fine for this. So the three questions I've written are key moments, what went well and what needs improving. I'm just using a purple zebra mildliner brush pen just to put two little stripes each side of that for my heading to stand out. And I've purposefully not given myself much space here because we're going to get into the detail a bit more in a moment. But this is really just to get you in the habit of starting to think about things, but not trying to worry too much about the detail initially. So I'm going to write down just some thoughts quickly in the little spaces that I've left myself, just so I've got the headline details. And for this, I'm using a TWSBI fountain pen. Okay, so that's my initial really quick review done with just those headline details in each of those three questions. So the next thing we're going to be looking at is something called Level 10 Life, which was devised by Hal Elrod, who's the author of The Miracle Morning. And what we're going to be doing is almost grading our life in certain areas. And the best way I've found to do Level 10 Life, so you've got something visual on your page, is by starting off with some circles. So I'm using a compass for this. And you want to draw 10 circles on your page, which will become apparent later, but it's so that we can have a way of recording kind of what level we feel we're at in each area of our life. So I'm starting off by just using a compass for this, and I'll be inking in these lines in a moment. But yeah, so the starting point is to get those 10 circles on your page. Don't worry if they're not completely evenly spaced, that really won't matter. The next thing to do is decide how many key areas in your life you'd like to review. I'm going to use 6 different areas. So the things I want to make sure I'm focusing on are my career or work, home, relationships, having fun, finances, and my personal contribution that I feel I'm making in different areas. But you can pick as many different areas as you like and base them on the categories that are most important to you. And because I've got 6 categories, I'm going to need to break my circle down into those 6 areas. So with a 360-degree circle, I'm going to be making marks at 60-degree intervals. And then I'm going to draw some lines out to make sure that I've got those clear sections. And then once we've got this down, we'll need to start inking them in. I'm going to use a Sakura Pigma Micron pen for this because I know that these are smudge proof, so depending on whether I decide to colour in pencil or brush pens or anything else, I know that this is going to be fine. So this does take a little while, so I'm not going to share too much of it, but you want to ink in each of the circles and the lines going through it. You should now have a circle that's looking something a little like this. So I'm just going to write my heading above of Level 10 Life. And then again, I'm going to just help that to stand out. And then the next thing you need to do is put some numbers into each of these circles. So we're going to start off with 1 at the circle at the bottom, and then 2, 3, right up to 10. And then the categories that you've picked, we're going to write around the outside. So for this first one, I'm going to label that career. I'm going to do home. Fun. Finances, contribution, and then relationships. And your next step is to now think about where you feel you score in each of these areas from 1 to 10. And definitely my key advice with this, as with all of these things, is not to overthink it. But so I tend to think about what would a level 10, say in my career, look like for me? What's a level 1 and what's kind of in the middle, and where do I feel I am in that? Am I above or below the middle of where I'd like to be? And we're then just going to colour those in. I tend to use a couple of different colours for this, so I might use a purple and a blue. So I'll use purple here, blue here, purple here, just so I can see where the different categories are. And I tend to do this level 10 live at least twice a year, but quite often once a quarter, so that I can see whether I'm starting to move things in the right direction. But again, we're going to come and add a little bit more detail to this in a minute. So, but yeah, you can use pens, pencils, anything you like, but just start thinking roughly whereabouts you think you are with each of those categories. Now that's finished, that should hopefully help to give you a really good visual picture of where you are with certain things and perhaps where some of your attention needs to be focused. And one of the reasons I really like to do this at the end of the year is before I start setting out plans for 2023, I want to make some kind of assessment of where I am at the moment, because that really helps to guide my plans and gets me thinking about where I need to be focusing my time a little more. So now that we've got this, we're going to start to add a bit more detail in terms of why we've given it that score and what our next steps might be to improve it. So on this page here, I'm going to start off, just because I want something a bit pretty on there, is I've got some lovely Esterbrook washi tape, and I'm just going to put some of that along the side of my page. And this falls into the category of, like I mentioned, not essential, but I like my journal pages to feel inviting to write on. And I know then that that helps me to keep coming back to my journal time and time again. And just some little splashes of colour from washi tapes and brush pens I think can make such a difference. But if you're somebody who finds colour distracting, you could definitely do this just in a black pen, just do cross hatching or something like that inside your circle instead. So I'm now going to write those 6 categories onto this page. And now I've got those lettered out. Again, I'm just going to draw my lines across. I like breaking my page into different sections to write in. I always think one of the biggest obstacles with journaling is when you're faced with that blank page. So as soon as I can start adding colour, headings, sections, anything to my page, I automatically want to then start filling it out. So now under each of these categories, I'm going to write the words review, and then next steps. And now I'm going to fill out a quick review on each of the categories. So where here we've got those kind of headline details, in each of these areas now I'll be thinking, okay, what kind of things have happened in my career and work this year? And for next steps, I'm going to be thinking, what if I was to wanted to move this up to a level 8? What might that include? So what are the very next things that I need to be thinking about? So I'd never be thinking, say on here, if I'm at a level 4, how do I get this out to a number 10? I might have in my mind what a 10 would look like, but in terms of my next steps, I'm literally just thinking about if I wanted to be able to colour in one more ring, what would that look like? What would I need to do? So I'm just going to spend a couple of minutes now filling out each of these categories. Well, that's my review of 2022 all complete. I really hope you've enjoyed this. I think it's so worthwhile just taking that bit of time towards the end of the year to really do an honest assessment of how things have been, because that really sets you up in the best possible way to start putting some really great plans in place for next year and coming at those from a place of being aware of where you are in all these different areas of your life. Well, I will be back soon on the Cult Pens channel sharing how I set my journals with my plans up for the new year. So I really hope you're looking forward to that. If you've got any questions, then please do just leave them below the video. I'll make sure I come over and just have a look and reply to any questions. And also, if you're wanting any other journaling content in the meantime, please do feel free to have a look at my YouTube channel, Helen Colebrook. But otherwise, I'll be back with you really soon. I hope you're doing really well, and thank you ever so much for watching.